C programming structure. When you look at any C program, it used to have three different types of instructions. First one is directives. What is directives? Directives are input to preprocessor. What we studied about preprocessor, it used to include library files with our program. It also defined the constants, right? Constant that will be transferred to actual value when we after pre-processing, right? During compilation, it will do the task. We can also make a conditional decisions whether we have to compile this for a particular platform or not. So we can pick files to compile using preprocessor directive. So the preprocessor is something which does the job before the compilation starts. So it prepare for the file. It prepare file for compilation right now. So it will peek your code and will include necessary things and will make the things ready for compilation. That is what the preprocessor used to do. As far as the preprocessor directive itself, we have a lot of directives. I think we have a list of things as include, as pragma, as define. Like that, we have many. Right. So those statements are called directives, preprocessor directives. That means an input given to preprocessor. Right. The second is declaration thing. What is meant by declaration? What is your understanding about declaration?
Before we are going to use any variable or anything, we will be declaring
Declaring what?
the variable, so where it need to be stored.
Where usually a computer program will store our data that we feed in program.
Yeah.
I'm asking, it is a question actually. Where it stores when we, I mean, I'm asking a question where the data that we enter in the program are stored.
It will be storing in RAM.
RAM. So declaration allocates the memory in RAM. Right. In memory, we have different things, stack, heap, and then rest of the RAM. We have different things. Where a variable, a memory to be reserved for the data that you have in your program, that you get from the user, that you read from a file. You need some location to store them, to process, because microprocessor controller will not get the data directly from the hard disk for processing. First, they have to copy them to RAM. From RAM only, they will do the all calculations because the RAM is memory mapped. That means they have much interface with the CPU and other arithmetic logic and other stuff than the hard disk. Right now, so the declaration defines named memory location. Actually, we are defining memory location to store our data. That's all. We are picking where our data to be stored. Should it be stored in memory address 1000 or it is 2000? In which memory address we want to store that? The data memory or RAM used to have address for each data, right? So in that memory location, we are picking that memory location to store our data using declaration. But instead of saying address for our data, instead of defining address to store our data, we give a name. Right. So that is called as named memory location. Whenever I use a particular variable name, actually indirectly I mean the memory address that I have given, that I have reserved from the RAM. So instead of using variable, we can even directly use address. The problem with that is you don't have a flexibility. Right? If you define to hard code your address, you have to only work with that address. But when you define variable, you have a flexibility. The address can be anything. Always the named memory location is same. Right. So the declaration reserves memory to store our data. So we can, in simple word, we can tell like that. Then statements. We have expressions. We have a decision making statements. We have repeating statements like loops. Those are called as statements. Right. These are the three major things. But do we have such thing in Python? Maybe because I had experience with us. He did a course with us in Python. Do we have such thing in Python?
Python, I'm not sure, Ansari.
What is your view?
Uh, no, sir. In Python, we don't need to declare anything. So it works on the object thing. Like so, it internally declares the data type of the like whatever we are saying, whether it's fold, float, or
Yeah, there is no dedicated declaration section in Python as we have in C. So you can declare variable on the go. When you write programs, you can declare them wherever you want. And there is no fixed data type. Actually, Python treats the variable in a different way compared to C. It uses the named memory location as just the labels or names. The memory locations in which they store the value, right? In which they store the value. Those were pointed by these names. So here in Python, your names are stored in a different memory location and the actual value that you want to store in that variable is stored in a different memory location and they use that names as a pointers to access them. That's why we have a much flexibility in Python. We can switch one data type to another data type very easily in Python compared to C. In C, once you define a particular data type for a named memory location, you have to use it in that data type only. It's not that much easy to change the data types of named memory location. That is one thing we have to know about C. Because C is something like an procedure based language or a procedural language. It's not like Python, an object oriented one, right? So, but still, even today, C is used. Why? Because these Python and other stuff require an intermediary layer to interact with the hardware. But C, you can directly go and touch the hardware without any problem, right? That's why people go for embedded C, right? These are the three major sections that you find in any programming, any C program, you used to find these three sections.